after being selected to accompany Qin Mu on a disaster relief mission. Chen Wanyan was dismayed when he learned he had to travel with Qin Mu again. He recalled their previous journeys together. In the southern borders they encountered the Nine Spectres sect, Corpse Immortal cult, and Great Mountain sect massacring a city with resurrected corpses. Witnessed Dushan Devil King devastating Heavenwave City, and later fought in Dashang City during the rebellion. Those experiences had nearly cost him his life. Even the battles at Qingmen Pass against the barbarian D Empire seemed ordinary compared to the disasters that followed Qin Mu. Wherever Qin Mu went, sect wars, devil gods, and countless powerful experts appeared. Remembering all this, Chen Wanyan shivered. He had also heard how Qin Mu had later been hunted by numerous experts in the Great Ruins. Caused upheaval at Great Thunderclap Monastery. Became involved in the attempted assassination of the Emperor and Imperial Preceptor by Dao sect in Great Thunderclap Monastery. And finally returned to the capital to kill Crown Prince Ling Yusha. Chen Wanyan believed he would have died many times over if he had experienced the same events. Although he had sworn never to accompany Qin Mu again, the Crown Prince had personally ordered him to join the expedition, making him feel as though he had been sentenced to death. He even wondered whether Qin Mu was simply cursed, bringing calamity wherever he went. Qin Mu reassured him that this journey would be safe. Crown Prince Ling Yushu, an old acquaintance from Imperial College, was leading officials from the Ministry of Works to inspect disaster relief efforts. Factories, snow-clearing projects, bridges, dams, and other public works rather than suppressing rebellions. Chen Wanyan could only hope that Qin Mu was right, while Si Yunxiang seemed disappointed that there would supposedly be no danger. The three settled into neighboring residences at Divine Arts Residence. Qin Mu advised Chen Wanyan and Si Yunxiang to study divine arts while waiting for departure. Chen Wanyan suggested bringing Yu Qinghong and Yun Ke, who were about to become divine arts practitioners, so everyone could share blessings and misfortune together. Qin Mu agreed to bring everyone who successfully cultivated divine arts before departure. Delighted by the idea that everyone would face danger together, Chen Wanyan hurried away. Si Yunxiang borrowed Qin Mu's higher-level book tablet once again so she could enter the third level of the Floor of Heavenly Records. The Imperial College also contained the Hall of Heavenly Works, which resembled the Heavenly Devil Cult's Craftsman Hall and Heavenly Works Hall. Its scholars researched mechanisms, spirit weapons, ships, bridges, roads, and vehicles. Because Imperial College had been jointly founded by the Imperial Preceptor and Heavenly Devil Patriarch, many of its halls and teachings had been copied from the Heavenly Devil cult, causing righteous sects such as Great Thunderclap Monastery and Dao sect to dislike Eternal Peace Empire. Graduates of Hall of Heavenly Works usually entered the Ministry of Works. Crown Prince Ling Yushu had brought mainly scholars from Heavenly Palace Courtyard together with Ministry of Works officials, many of whom had graduated from Hall of Heavenly Works and were effectively Qin Mu's fellow students. The Ministry of Works consisted of the Department of Works, Department of Land, Department of Harvest, and Department of Water, while many of its leaders were actually hall masters and incense masters of the Heavenly Devil cult. Half the officials were their disciples and the other half were Imperial College graduates. Nearly every important position within the Ministry of Works was occupied by members of the Heavenly Devil cult or Imperial College, allowing the knowledge taught in Heavenly Works, craftsman, vegetable, rain, and farmer halls to be applied directly in governing the empire. When Qin Mu saw the officials accompanying Ling Yushu, he was surprised to find that most belonged to the Heavenly Devil cult. Chen Wanyan, Yu Qinghong, Yun Ke, Wei Yang, and Si Yunxiang soon arrived as well. Chen Wanyan's bruised face showed he had been beaten by the others. Yet he looked very satisfied. Seeing the Ministry of Works officials, Si Yunxiang quietly asked Qin Mu whether the Crown Prince was also secretly part of their cult. Qin Mu was similarly curious and asked Ling Yushu whether he had heard of the Heavenly Saint cult. But Ling Yushu instead explained the mission. They would inspect every prefecture's geography, irrigation systems, city defenses, farmland, soil, vegetables, fruits, and disaster recovery. Officials would answer his questions while the others independently examined hydrology, fortifications, land, and food supplies to verify everything. Any defects, corruption, land seizures, or shortages had to be reported truthfully. The Minister of Works remarked that inspecting every prefecture would require 2 or 3 years. But Ling Yushu revealed that he had secured the empire's fastest vessel. The cloud-chasing ship, an ironclad treasure ship with remarkable pill furnaces. Many Ministry of Works officials exchanged strange looks and glanced toward Qin Mu. Qin Mu immediately realized that the ship was actually Fan Yunshao's cloud-chasing pirate ship. He himself had built 5 such treasure ships in the past. 3 belonged to the Heavenly Devil cult. 1 to himself, and 1 had been given to Fan Yunxiao. Most of the officials present had helped construct those ships. Qin Mu amused himself by thinking that perhaps the future emperor might even become one of the Heavenly Saint cult's heavenly kings or guardians. As Ling Yushu seemed deeply connected with the cult, Heavenly Works Hall Master quietly informed Qin Mu that Fan Yunxiao had recently requested a larger ship. Which now made sense because he had apparently been doing business with the Crown Prince. Soon the flying ship arrived. Fan Yunxiao and the former bandits, now neatly dressed, respectfully greeted both the Crown Prince and Qin Mu. Ling Yushu immediately realized the ship belonged to the Heavenly Saint cult and complained that its rental price had been outrageously expensive. Qin Mu explained that its owners had once been bandits and naturally remained somewhat ruthless. As everyone boarded, an imperial college scholar arrived late. The handsome young man was actually Ling Yushu disguised as a man. Ling Yushu was shocked that she had come, but she explained that their father had personally granted her permission. Ignoring her brother, she happily approached Qin Mu and asked if he recognized her. Qin Mu almost called her by her old nickname before correcting himself to Sister Yushu. Delighted, she lightly punched him in the chest and warned him not to say the nickname, or she would kick him off the ship. Ling Yushu watched helplessly as his sister treated Qin Mu with obvious affection. Si Yunxiang quietly approached Qin Mu while playing with the dragon Qilin and silently observed Ling Yushu. After exchanging a glance with Si Yunxiang, Ling Yushu considered changing back into female clothes. But Ling Yushu quickly persuaded her to remain dressed as a man. The cloud-chasing ship flew 300 miles to auspicious Prefecture. There, the travelers saw that the great bridge spanning 20 miles across Mud River had been severely damaged. The snow disaster had frozen the river, allowing massive ice mountains to drift downstream and smash the bridge's central section. Repairing it over the swift current seemed extremely difficult. After landing, Ling Yushu ordered the prefectural magistrate to gather all local divine arts practitioners to assist the assistant minister of the Ministry of Works in repairing the bridge. Hundreds of practitioners assembled under Heavenly Works Hall Master. Qin Mu and the others followed to observe. Heavenly Works Hall Master gave a command, and hundreds of divine arts practitioners simultaneously unleashed their magic power. The waters of Mud River rose into the air, forming a massive arch that carried the river 5 or 6 miles before it flowed back into its original course. The entire riverbed beneath was left completely dry, with even the moisture drawn out of the mud. Heavenly Works Hall Master ordered everyone to smelt stone and reconnect the bridge. Practitioners possessing vermilion bird spirit bodies erected enormous furnaces on the exposed riverbed, melted stone into lava, while Ministry of Works officials shaped the molten rock with magic power into stone pillars and structural supports. Other officials transported pre-cut stones from nearby mountains and carefully laid them into place. Within only 2 hours, the enormous bridge had been completely restored. Witnessing the entire process, Qin Mu was deeply astonished and inwardly praised it as a miraculous display of supreme craftsmanship. After the great bridge was completed, officials from the Ministry of Works inspected the Mud River Dam. They drove stakes into the dam every 300 yards, with a person stationed beside each one, while a huge bell was erected at the river's center. Whenever the bell rang, the stakes vibrated, and the officials listened carefully to the resonance. Qin Mu asked what they were doing. Ling Yushu explained that Mud River had frequently flooded in the past. So the imperial preceptor ordered the assistant minister of the Ministry of Works to control it. Copper walls 2 inches thick and 2 feet high had been buried along both sides of the dam for 10,000 miles. These walls were engraved with rune markings. When the bell rang, the runes resonated together, allowing officials to detect hidden cracks or thinning through the sound. Qin Mu praised the ingenious design. Si Yunxiang remarked that the emperor had almost executed the assistant minister for spending too much money. Ling Yushu explained that he had invested enormous sums into flying ships, luxurious sea vessels, land ships, flywheel carriages, smelting factories, weapon workshops, manufacturing plants, urban reconstruction, underground sewer systems, roads, cloud chariots for sieges, border fortresses, and machine manufacturing. According to her brother, the expenses had emptied the imperial treasury, left the emperor and royal family living frugally, and delayed officials' salaries for months. However, after the smelting factories and manufacturing plants began operating, flying ships and other products were sold to merchants, quickly replenishing the treasury within 2 years. The empire even had to build additional treasuries to store the wealth, leaving the emperor grateful that he had spared the assistant minister. Ling Yusho added that while the Ministry of Works spent the most money, the water department also consumed vast resources by building irrigation systems, canals, dams, bridges, flood control projects, and water transport, all of which greatly benefited the people. Xi Yunxiang questioned the role of the government minister, noting that Assistant Minister Shan Yuxin seemed to handle all the work. Ling Yusho replied that the government minister supervised spending. Xi Yunxiang suggested the emperor still distrusted them because the assistant minister and many officials were members of the Heavenly Saint cult. Ling Yusho realized Xi Yunxiang was speaking on behalf of the cult, and Xi Yunxiang openly admitted that, as its saintess, she naturally cared about its interests, just as Qin Mu did as cult master. The two girls silently stared at one another, ignoring their rivalry. Qin Mu continued observing the inspections. Officials from the water and land departments examined irrigation systems and measured farmland, while the Department of Harvest inspected crops. An official from the Department of Harvest, who was also an incense master of Farmer Hall, found insect eggs hidden in the soil. He warned that although the winter had been harsh, the eggs had survived and would hatch within a few days. Since disaster victims had burned most vegetation during winter, the insects would attack the crops once they emerged. He recommended stationing sword experts, spell experts skilled in needle techniques, or venom insect experts to eliminate the pests immediately. Qin Mu agreed and ordered Fan Yunxiao to summon a dozen disciples each from Sword Hall, Spell Hall, and Venomous Insect Hall for practical training. Meanwhile, the water department dredged irrigation channels and redesigned waterways to improve irrigation. The land department measured farmland using heaven measuring rulers, while imperial scholars recorded the data with special abacuses formed from vital qi. Shan Yuxin led the Ministry of Works into the sky to survey damaged roads throughout auspicious Prefecture before organizing repairs. Qin Mu admired Shan Yuxin's systematic methods and recognized that the Ministry of Works truly benefited both the empire and its people. At the city lord's manor, Crown Prince Ling Yushu spent an entire night listening to reports from the magistrate of auspicious Prefecture and examining official records without rest. The next morning, Shan Yuxin delivered several completed reports, stating that irrigation, transportation, and agricultural issues had all been resolved, leaving only land disputes. Ling Yushu was astonished by the speed, but Shan Yuxin calmly told him to prepare to execute people. He explained that illegal land seizures during the chaos were extremely serious. Ling Yushu ordered the magistrate to stay awake and review the reports together while carrying out arrests and executions. Those deserving arrest would be arrested, and those deserving death would be executed without mercy during these extraordinary times. Qin Mu then summoned Chen Wanyan and the other Imperial College students, assigning them to accompany the officials during the arrests. Chen Wanyan complained that Qin Mu had promised there would be no danger, since those who had seized land were powerful local tyrants with influential families. Qin Mu reminded them that they were the empire's elite and should not fear local bullies. Wei Yang, Yu Qinghong, and the others eagerly accepted the task. After the official orders were issued, the students joined the officials in capturing the offenders. They returned that afternoon covered in blood, having fought several fierce battles. Ling Yushu spent 2 more days resolving the affairs of auspicious Prefecture before continuing eastward, addressing issues along the Mud River as well. Eventually they arrived at River Prefecture, a prosperous coastal city with an important harbor that traded not only throughout the empire but also with foreign nations across the sea. By then everyone knew their duties and conducted inspections without further instruction. After all work in River Prefecture was completed, Ling Yushu saw that everyone was exhausted and granted several days of rest. The group cheered. Ling Yushu invited Qin Mu to visit the bustling marketplace, famous for its foreign goods. Xi Yunxiang insisted on accompanying them, prompting silent hostility between the two girls while Qin Mu remained oblivious. At the market, Qin Mu was fascinated not by the merchandise but by the foreign races. He saw one-eyed people with a single vertical eye, two-headed humans with 4 arms, and sea tribe maidens dressed beautifully, possessing octopus-like legs and gills beside their ears. Si Yunxiang explained that they came from an underwater kingdom and traded regularly with humans. Qin Mu stopped before a blue coral tree surrounded by a floating sphere of water. Tiny 3-inch-tall people rode seahorses around the coral, singing unfamiliar songs. More miniature riders emerged from the coral, dancing and circling it together. The coral itself seemed to contain a miniature civilization. As Qin Mu, Ling Yusho, and Si Yunxiang admired the coral, a tall woman in a dark green dress approached to examine it. Qin Mu noticed that her red jade earring suddenly transformed into a small red snake, which hissed at him. He immediately recognized her as Long Jiaonan. Long Jiaonan warned Qin Mu not to draw his sword because her snake, Shaoang, had reached the 7 stars realm and could swallow all 3 of them at once. She revealed that her father, the old Dragon King, wished to meet Qin Mu. Qin Mu was alarmed to learn the old Dragon King was also in River Prefecture. Long Jiaonan bitterly remarked that after Qin Mu had destroyed the Dragon Rider sect, she and her father had been forced to flee and hide in the Eastern Sea. Si Yunxiang jokingly congratulated Long Jiaonan on capturing both the Heavenly Devil Cult Master and the 6th Princess, pretending to leave since she was no longer needed. Long Jiaonan sneered, and Shaoang slithered toward Si Yunxiang, licking her neck with its tongue. She revealed that she already knew Si Yunxiang's true identity as the eldest daughter of the Si family and the saintess of the Heavenly Devil Cult, making her every bit as valuable a captive as Princess Ling Yusho. The Si family of the Heavenly Saint cult had always been responsible for managing the cult's techniques, inheritance, wealth, and expansion. Because of its importance, the cult's saintess usually came from the Si family, making its status even higher than the cult master in some respects. Granny Si had once held this position, and Si Yunxiang now inherited the same role. Knowing Si Yunxiang's importance, Long Jiaonan was delighted after capturing not only the 6th princess of the Eternal Peace Empire but also the cult master and saintess of the Heavenly Saint cult. She cautiously confiscated Qin Mu's peyote sack, pig slaughtering knives, iron hammer, brushes, paper, inkstone, and every spirit weapon carried by Qin Mu, Ling Yusho, and Si Yunxiang. Although Qin Mu's writing tools appeared ordinary, she returned them after confirming they were not spirit weapons. She also ordered her small red snake to search their clothes for any hidden treasures, leaving them no opportunity to escape. Fortunately for her, Qin Mu had left the dragon Qilin sleeping in the city lord's manor. Disguised as a charming young woman, Long Jiaonan escorted the captives toward the harbor, explaining that her ship was waiting and that by the time the crown prince realized what had happened, they would already be far out on the East Sea. She attached the small red snake, Shaoang, to Qin Mu's ear as a living hostage, warning that any attempt to escape would cost him his life. On their way, they encountered Chen Wanyan, Wei Yang, Yu Qinghong, and other imperial scholars. Long Jiaonan quietly threatened Qin Mu to behave naturally or she would kill both him and his companions. Chen Wanyan greeted Qin Mu and noticed the unfamiliar woman. After a brief conversation, the two groups separated. Once inside the fair again, Chen Wanyan immediately realized something was wrong. Qin Mu's weapons, Si Yunxiang's hairpin, and Ling Yusho's spirit weapons had all disappeared, proving they had been captured. He ordered the others to inform the crown prince while he secretly pursued them alone. Long Jiaonan boarded her ship with the prisoners and ordered it to sail. Chen Wanyan chased after them by running across the sea at astonishing speed. When Long Jiaonan noticed him, she dismissed him as merely an imperial scholar and summoned countless enormous sea snakes with her whistle. Chen Wanyan fought through the overwhelming swarm with his flying swords, but by the time he escaped, the ship had vanished. Even after flying into the sky to search the surrounding sea, he could no longer find it. On the ship, Long Jiaonan allowed Qin Mu and the two women to move freely. Qin Mu quietly began painting scenes of stormy seas with fierce waves, dark clouds, lightning, and a lone ship. Long Jiaonan praised his painting skill, while a boatman mocked him for painting despite facing death. Qin Mu calmly continued producing painting after painting, each depicting violent storms. Finally, He added the finishing strokes, causing the paintings to seem almost alive, then casually threw dozens of them into the sea. Qin Mu smiled and asked whether Long Jiaonan's ship could withstand strong winds and waves. She mocked him, pointing out that the weather was perfectly clear. Suddenly, fierce winds arose, black clouds covered the sky, and enormous waves lifted the ship into the air before smashing it back onto the sea. Lightning struck wildly across the storm. Amid the chaos, Qin Mu flicked Xiaoang from his ear. As the snake attempted to reveal its true form, hundreds of lightning bolts converged and struck it repeatedly, knocking it into the sea where continuous lightning paralyzed it and forced it beneath the water. Long Jiaonan was horrified, unable to understand why the storm had appeared or why the lightning targeted only Xiaoang. She gradually realized the disaster resembled Qin Mu's paintings. Taking advantage of the confusion, Qin Mu grabbed Si Yunxiang and Ling Yusho and leapt into the sea. At the same moment, Long Jiaonan's ship split into 5 pieces, throwing everyone into the water. Through the darkness, she saw another ship emerging from the storm with Qin Mu and the 2 women standing safely on its bow. Qin Mu waved at her before the ship disappeared into the darkness. Long Jiaonan tried to pursue them but was struck down by gigantic waves. When she broke free, countless lightning bolts focused entirely on her, severely injuring her. Only after the storm suddenly disappeared did she regain her footing. Looking around, she saw ink dispersing into the seawater. Xiaoang returned badly wounded, while nearly all the boatmen, including Old Ghost 3, had perished. Long Jiaonan finally suspected that the entire disaster had been created by Qin Mu's paintings. The ship carrying Qin Mu, Ling Yusho, and Si Yunxiang dissolved into a pool of ink, forcing them to continue by walking across the sea with their vital qi. They spotted an island ahead. Since they were deep within the East Sea and returning by themselves would consume all their strength, Qin Mu suggested resting on the island while waiting for Chen Wanyan to notify the crown prince, who could locate them using Fan Yunxiao's ship. As soon as they landed, countless tiny yellow humanoids carrying knives, forks, clubs, and staffs rushed out from the forest. However, after seeing the 3 humans, they froze in terror and screamed that giants had arrived. The tiny creatures scattered in every direction, hiding beneath rocks, sand, and leaves, while some simply lay on the ground pretending to be dead. Si Yunxiang recognized them as Solomon's seals that had cultivated into spirits, explaining that consuming them could greatly increase one's cultivation. One of the tiny spirits abandoned its act, screamed that the giants were going to eat them, tried to flee, crashed headfirst into a tree, and fainted. Qin Mu captured a Solomon's seal and examined him closely. He noticed the tiny being's legs were intertwined roots. His clothes were woven from grass, and he carried a bamboo spear tip with an unknown metal engraved with rune marks. Since the Solomon's seals clearly did not understand runes or spells, Qin Mu wondered where the spearheads had come from. The frightened Solomon's seal repeatedly fainted whenever he saw Qin Mu's smile, while a rescue party of hundreds of Solomon's seals fled immediately instead of helping. Qin Mu revived the tiny creature, questioned him, and learned only that the answers could be obtained from their ancestor. After capturing another Solomon's seal who had called the first a traitor, Qin Mu ordered both of them to guide him. The group entered the island and discovered an enormous Solomon's seal civilization. Delicate vine houses hung beneath tree branches like green fruit, while a miniature stone city covered the ground. Tens of thousands of Solomon's seals lived there, and the guards could only stare speechlessly at the 3 giant visitors. Si Yunxiang suggested that capturing and selling them would create immense wealth, but Qin Mu rejected the idea. He explained that although the great ruins followed the law of the strong preying upon the weak, true predators killed only for survival rather than slaughtering everything weaker than themselves. Since the Solomon's seals possessed intelligence and had built their own civilization, they deserved to be treated respectfully. An elderly Solomon's seal woman, escorted in a carriage, came to welcome them. Qin Mu politely returned her greeting and apologized for disturbing her people. She explained that their homes were too small to host giants but answered Qin Mu's questions. She said their race had multiplied because of the land and water. Beginning when she awakened with intelligence beside a spring, she led them to a deep spring that continually supplied water despite countless Solomon's seals drawing from it. Qin Mu examined the spring water with his green heaven's eyes and discovered it contained extraordinary power. He realized the Solomon seals had become intelligent after drinking this water without developing demon traits. The old woman further explained that the rune-inscribed metal spearheads had all been washed out from the spring itself. Believing the spring concealed a secret, Qin Mu asked permission to explore it. The old woman warned that it was immeasurably deep and offered vines as safety lines. But Qin Mu refused. After taking in a massive breath, he jumped into the pond, followed by Ling Yusho and Si Yunxiang. Using their cultivation techniques, they descended through the increasingly dark water under growing pressure. Giant luminous pearls embedded in the walls illuminated the depths. After diving several hundred yards, they nearly reached the limit of what their bodies could endure before finally seeing the bottom. At the bottom rested an enormous cauldron dozens of yards across. Water flowed upward from its center while a dry, air-filled space surrounded it. The three passed through the water barrier and landed on solid ground. After drying themselves, they surveyed their surroundings. They realized they were beneath the sea, with dark ocean waters outside, underwater volcanoes releasing lava, and gigantic sea creatures occasionally approaching the illuminated area. They explored ancient ruins built from white jade and marble pillars, with scattered rubble indicating the remains of a shrine. The enormous cauldron continuously produced the water that had granted intelligence to the Solomon seals. Qin Mu remarked that the layout resembled the surging river dragon palace in the Great Ruins. Though this place was vastly larger, Si Yunxiang wondered if it was another dragon palace. But Ling Yusho sensed no dragon aura. Instead, she felt a powerful hostility toward dragons and believed a god had once resided there. Qin Mu replied that even if it had belonged to a god, the god was certainly dead. Clearing away rubble, Qin Mu uncovered a fallen stone tablet inscribed with the ancient words, "Bent Mountain God Shrine." He questioned why a mountain god's shrine would exist beneath the sea. Si Yunxiang concluded that such a thing would only make sense if the region had once been above sea level before later sinking beneath the ocean. After Qin Mu removed the artificial sun from the shrine, the interior became dimmer, but the moonlight and starlight grew even brighter, intertwining beautifully instead of competing as they would in the outside world. Ling Yusho and Si Yunxiang admired the romantic scenery. But Qin Mu immediately appeared behind the moon in the form of a bull-headed figure and removed it. The two girls silently complained that he completely lacked romantic sense, imagining how perfect the atmosphere would have been if only he had left the moon and stars alone. They then heard the sound of tiles being stacked as Qin Mu dismantled the artificial sky piece by piece. The bullhead repeatedly appeared to pluck away the stars until, after an hour, the sun, moon, and every star had been removed. Walking outside, they found a mountain-like pile of luminous pearls together with two enormous jade eyes, each about 3 yards tall. The eyes appeared to be carved from fine jade rather than belonging to a real teoti. Ling Yusho examined them and discovered countless intricate formation markings engraved within. Their pupils were completely shut, appearing only as thin white lines surrounded by golden vein-like patterns. And despite previously radiating immense heat, they now felt completely cold to the touch. Si Yunxiang expressed disappointment that they were merely jade constructs rather than actual teoti eyes. Qin Mu stood behind one of the jade eyes and began studying the formation on its back. As he adjusted it with his vital qi, the eye slowly opened into a vertical slit, revealing an unimaginably complicated mechanism-like formation composed of countless interlocking structures. Terrifying flames immediately burst from the pupil. Simply looking toward it caused unbearable pain in the girl's eyes, forcing Si Yunxiang to pull Ling Yusho away. A snow-white beam of light shot forward, igniting the air itself. Everything along its path was instantly destroyed. White marble flooring melted into lava that was immediately vaporized, while glazed roof tiles protected by rune formations vanished completely. Ling Yusho realized that if she had remained standing there, she would have been killed instantly. Qin Mu continued adjusting the formation behind the eye, gradually widening the pupil so that the fire energy became even more violent, making the surrounding area feel as though it were beside the blazing sun. He instructed the girls to close their eyes because he intended to test the jade eye at full power by narrowing the pupil again into a thin slit. Although they obeyed and shut their eyes, the overwhelming brilliance still penetrated their eyelids. They could sense an incomparably thin blade of light slicing through space before Qin Mu finally deactivated the formation. Even after opening their eyes again, they could barely see because the intense light had damaged their vision. though their cultivation would eventually heal the injury. Qin Mu then looked up and was shocked. The blade of light had cut the shrine cleanly in half through its center. Although it still stood for the moment, it was ready to collapse at any instant. Worse still, the beam had sliced across the sky of the underwater world itself, opening a gigantic crack in the barrier that held back the pressure of the sea. Seawater had already begun leaking through. Qin Mu unconsciously pulled out several strands of his beard while realizing the consequences. His heart ached because this simple experiment had damaged the barrier protecting the underwater world, meaning the sea would completely flood it within a few days. As water droplets landed upon the already weakened shrine, the structure could no longer support itself. With two loud crashes, it split apart and collapsed, revealing the gigantic skeleton of a pureblood Teoti hidden within. The skeleton itself had also been sliced neatly into two by the Jade Eye's beam. Looking at the destruction, Si Yunxiang muttered that the heavenly kings had been right about Qin Mu demolishing everything wherever he went. Ling Yusho also lamented that such an ancient shrine and mysterious underwater world, which had survived for tens of thousands of years, had been destroyed immediately after Qin Mu arrived. She jokingly gave him the nickname, Demolisher Qin. Qin Mu desperately denied the accusation, insisting he had demolished nothing and asking them not to ruin his reputation. The two girls immediately listed his previous deeds, destroying the Hall of Three Kings upon arriving at Saint Arrival Mountain, repeatedly demolishing scholars' residence, destroying buildings around the Temple of Heaven while leading Heaven Devil cult, demolishing Heaven Wave City, and now accidentally destroying this underwater world. Qin Mu could only mutter weak denials while feeling miserable. The girls then searched through the collapsed shrine for useful materials. Ling Yusho carried back two gigantic metal pillars, each weighing tens of thousands of pounds. Relying purely on brute strength, Si Yunxiang teased her by saying fat people were naturally strong, while claiming she herself was too delicate to resist even the wind. Ling Yusho retaliated by mocking Si Yunxiang's figure, saying she barely had any flesh on her chest. Si Yunxiang responded that she was still growing and argued that large breasts would eventually sag with age. After glaring at each other, they stopped arguing. Ling Yusho then asked Qin Mu whether the pillars could be forged into spirit weapons. While examining them, Qin Mu discovered they were made from several different metals combined together. Unlike Eternal Peace Empire's usual pursuit of pure metals, these pillars deliberately mixed materials to achieve much greater strength and flexibility than winter crystal iron. Confident in his smithing ability, Qin Mu declared that he could forge Ling Yusho's 9 dragons weapons. He activated the Sun Jade Eye as a furnace, melted one of the copper pillars, and first forged a giant hammer. He asked Ling Yusho to demonstrate every transformation of her original 9 dragons weapons, carefully observed them, produced detailed blueprints, and then began forging. After 2 full days, he completed the weapon. The finished 9 dragons weapons consisted of 9 metal dragons that could combine into an enormous hammer, separate into the 9 dragons' divine flames shroud by linking their tails together, or transform into the 9 dragons' golden wall. Through the spirit creation technique, each dragon possessed more than 900 internal joints, allowing them to move naturally despite being made of metal. Every dragon scale could detach and become an independent razor-sharp weapon. Their claws functioned like hooks, their teeth like blades, and their whiskers became soft yet extremely durable chains capable of binding enemies. Ling Yusho immediately refined the weapon by imprinting it with her vital qi. After testing every transformation, she found it perfectly responsive and continuously praised Qin Mu's craftsmanship, joking that it was only slightly inferior to that of the Ministry of Works assistant minister. Envious of Ling Yusho's new weapon, Si Yunxiang displayed her own spirit weapon form, 1,000 Silks, a sword and spell based upon the great educational heavenly devil scriptures. She asked whether Qin Mu could forge metal as soft as silk. Qin Mu admitted the task was far more difficult. The metal had to be hammered until it became thinner than silk itself while still carrying countless intricate spell formations. Working together, Qin Mu and Si Yunxiang repeatedly forged, stretched, engraved, folded, and reforged the metal membrane whenever it tore during inscription. After numerous failures, they finally succeeded in producing 1,000 silks. With a thought, Si Yunxiang transformed it into a ribbon that elegantly wrapped around her waist. By this time, seawater was steadily flooding the underwater world through the broken barrier. making it impossible to remain there much longer. Qin Mu used threads of vital qi to weave a net that gathered both jade eyes and all the luminous pearls before leading the others toward the enormous cauldron. Upon seeing it, Si Yunxiang tried to lift it away but failed despite using all her strength. Ling Yusho mocked her for being weak because of her small chest, only to embarrass herself when she also failed to move the cauldron. Qin Mu explained that the cauldron continuously supported a column of spirit water extending 5,000 yards upward while bearing its own tremendous weight. It was undoubtedly a divine artifact that none of them could possibly remove. Regretfully abandoning it, the three swam back toward the surface. After emerging from the pond, Ling Yusho happily remarked that their expedition had still yielded many valuable treasures. At that moment, a voice interrupted them from the shore. Long Jiaonan was waiting beside the pond, sitting atop the head of a gigantic red snake whose enormous body coiled around the entire pond. Smiling as her gaze swept over the three of them, she told Qin Mu that finding him had required considerable effort. Before she could say anything further, Ling Yusho and Si Yunxiang immediately leapt into the air and launched a coordinated attack, activating the newly forged 9 dragons weapons and 1,000 silks against Long Jiaonan without hesitation.